You know how it feels to want to say no to someone but feel the words get stuck in your mouth as you watch yourself croak a resentful yes for the 1000th time. You also know how it feels to want to admit something to someone but when the moment comes you freeze in place and you say nothing because you're terrified of how it might land. And you also know how it feels to feel every part of your body shrink as you watch yourself tolerate disrespect again instead of saying, hold on, who do you think you're talking to? You're not alone in feeling this, because the other day I did a poll on this YouTube channel and found out thousands of people feel exactly how you feel, if not worse. So it's time to set the record straight and teach you what no one taught you in school, which is how to be more assertive. Now, there is one book I'm going to recommend you to read on this topic, which is When I Say No, I Feel Guilty by Manuel J. Smith. But don't worry. I've not only read the book for you, but I found the 2 pages in that book which contain all the gold and knowledge you need to know about how to step in to the assertive version of yourself so you can finally give yourself the permission to do so and reclaim your life and your energy. And these 2 pages contain something I call the 11 laws of assertiveness. And I'm going to break them down for you right now so you can give yourself this permission to step into the assertive you. But first of all, we need to get crystal clear on what assertiveness actually is so we can make sure we are all on the same page. Now, let's get clear on what assertiveness actually is. If you've seen any other videos I've done about this topic, then this will sound familiar, in which case just treat it as a refresh. I define assertiveness slightly differently from how other people do. Nevertheless, in my opinion, assertiveness is the honest communication of what's going on inside you. Don't know whether I should keep that in or not, but anyway, perhaps I will. I've never burped in the video. Oh, fuck it. Should I keep that in? Slight stomachal technical difficulty there. I define assertiveness as the honest communication of what's going on inside you to other people, as best as you can honestly communicate that. In a sentence, assertiveness says, this is what I need, think, feel, and want. I also invite you to let me know the same information about yourself as best as you can. But sometimes it's better to understand something based on what it's not. So seeing as assertiveness exists as the golden in-between of passivity and aggression, let's cover what these 2 things are before we circle back to assertiveness. Based on the visuals on the screen, if we start with the extreme of passivity. Passivity is different from assertiveness in the sense that it is you shrinking yourself to keep the peace and please others. In a sentence, passivity says, in an act, passivity or submissiveness in the extreme is you gathering up all the thoughts, feelings and needs inside you in a big bowl or ball, throwing them onto others and just saying, look, you know best. It's just you decide for me. You take care of all that stuff. In fact, pardon me for living. That was a bit harsh, but we've all been there. Passivity is you giving away the ownership of yourself to others, whether that be your needs, boundaries, time and voice. It's worth noting here that passivity or submissiveness, they're not always a bad thing. The extreme of them is because it's how you start abandoning yourself and forget your voice in a relationship. But they're not always a bad thing in the sense of it sometimes is good to be humble and let someone else lead in a relationship. The trouble is when it starts to come at the cost of yourself and you stop recognising yourself in your interactions with others. Let's flip to the other extreme. Aggressiveness, if passivity is you giving away the ownership of yourself to others, aggressiveness is you trying to seize the ownership of others for yourself. Through force, you try and impose your will, needs and beliefs onto others without respect. You also try and bend and warp their will, needs and beliefs in order to fit your life narrative. The way to think about aggressiveness is you are trying to do something at the expense of someone else. Circling back to assertiveness, the phrase of aggressiveness would obviously be, it's my way or the highway, you're going to bend to my will. Assertiveness is the middle point between these 2 because it involves the owning of yourself and letting others own themselves. That's a key part, this final aspect, letting others own themselves. And it's best illustrated here on the board by the dotted lines separating these two people. I have my space, you have your space. Let's come together, share spaces, but understand where the space begins and ends. Here are my thoughts, feelings, needs, time, choices. This is where my responsibility lies. Here's where yours lies as well. You honestly communicate what's going on inside of you. So just before we move on, when you own yourself and let others own themselves, the natural byproduct of that is clarity, respect, freedom, connection, autonomy, and a healthy relationship where two people, by relationship, whether that's romantic, friendship, family relationship, work relationship, two whole people are coming together to be connected, not entangled. Now, just before we move on here, in another video, we broke down the etymology of the word assertiveness, and it allows you to see it through a lens that deepens your understanding of it. The word assertiveness, or to assert, comes from the Latin word asserere, or bro, when bro tries to sound Latin, asserere, hold on, oh, damn, this word has some ass. What it means is to claim, which is an interesting lens through which to see assertiveness, because you can see it as if every time you say yes when you mean it, no when you mean it, admit how you feel, think, or admit what you want, and also expose yourself to the world and other people, even though you might be coiling in fear. Every time you do that, it's as if you are laying claim to the only thing in life that you possess, which is yourself. And if you've lost yourself for a long period of time through being submissive, maybe through being aggressive, then every time you assert yourself, you reclaim yourself. So now you understand all of that, you are finally ready to get the permission you've been waiting for this whole time. The permission to step into the assertive you. Here are the 11 laws of assertiveness, which will help you do so, and that when I learned them, changed how I saw everything. As we're going through each law, you don't have to remember everything that I'm saying. Just pay attention to which ones, or one, stands out to you most at the moment, and just feel into the words as I'm expressing them and let them change anything going on inside you. And then at the end, I'm going to give you a little what to do next, okay? But just let them hit. Law number 1. You have the right to judge your own behaviour, thoughts and emotions, and to take the responsibility for their initiation and consequences upon yourself. What does that mean? In other words, you have the right to accept the labels, thoughts and opinions of others, or to let them bounce off you. So if someone calls you whatever, someone says you're broken, you're emotional, you're disrespectful, you're a lazy friend, you're a good friend, or you're a bad son, daughter, husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever they call you, it is up to you to have the final say, which can be, I disagree, or I agree. No one gets to be the ultimate judge of you but yourself. Law number 2. You have the right to offer no reasons or excuses for justifying your behaviour. This is a tricky one for a lot of us, so hear me out. Unless you want your decision to be negotiated, don't justify it. Because when you justify or explain, it's as if you enter a courtroom defence that other people feel obliged to join. You know, I don't want to come because I insert excuse. It will only take 5 minutes, but you didn't come last time. You always bail. It will be fun. Your decision is enough. It doesn't create a debt that then needs to be cleared with more words. Number 3. You have the right to judge if you are responsible for finding solutions to other people's problems. The easiest way to spend the rest of your life trying to rescue everyone is to convince yourself that you are responsible for solving their problems. For example, a co-worker asks you to cover their shift because they want to go somewhere. You say no, but then they get stressed. You might convince yourself you need to scramble to help them reduce their stress. You don't. Your boyfriend or girlfriend is running late for work and they ask you for a lift. You say no because you've set the boundary in the past that you're not going to give them any lifts. They come home in the evening annoyed at you because they was late and their boss had a go at them. You might convince yourself you need to apologise. You don't. Finally, maybe your parents one day invite you for a barbecue round theirs next Sunday, but you've already made plans so you politely decline. But then they act out and stonewall you and start questioning your morality with phrases such as, "We didn't raise you like that." So now feeling the guilt, you might convince yourself you need to make it up to them by buying them a gift, calling them more, spending more time with them, going to more barbecue visits in the future. You don't. The key thing here is I'm not saying you can't help your co-worker calm down, you can't apologise to your partner, and I'm not saying you can't make it up to your parents if you feel like you want to do so. All I'm saying is you don't have to do any of these things. You are not responsible for clearing up the emotional mess other people experience after you assert yourself and you honestly communicate yourself to them. No one has a gun to your head. Number 4. You have the right, this is one of my favourite ones, you have the right to change your mind. A lot of us humans confuse morality, being a good person, with consistency. So personally, we show up in our relationships with the beliefs that, if I've said yes to something, I can't back out ever, or I have to follow through, because we see being consistent as equaling I'm a good person and I'm integral to my word. But the thing is with human beings is we don't know everything. Meaning, you are allowed to let time pass and let new information reveal itself along the way with whatever decision you've made, whether it's saying yes to going to an event, saying yes to making a big life decision, saying yes to this, that or the other. You're allowed to say, do you know what? I don't actually want this anymore. You are allowed to change your mind. Yes, sometimes it can be annoying, to use that evaluative term, if you build big plans around something and then someone last minute says, do you know what, actually I don't want this. But at the end of the day, think about it. If you genuinely wake up and realise, do you know what, there's just something that feels wrong about this, or I just don't want this anymore, I don't want to do this thing. If you drag yourself to do that thing, then the energy you show up with isn't exactly going to be great. Yes, people are going to be upset perhaps that you've changed your mind, but for me personally, if I wake up and realise that I'm speeding headfirst into a brick wall, I'm going to admit, oh, do you know what, something about that just doesn't really feel right. Let me turn the corner. And yes, again, some people are going to react and try and guilt trip you into not changing your mind because we all love consistency, but you're allowed to change your mind. Other people are allowed to be annoyed, frustrated, disappointed, let down, but you're allowed to change your mind if that's what you want to do. Simply because new information will reveal itself along the way, information that once upon a time when you made the decision, you couldn't have foreseen. Point number 5. Oh, there was a cool line I forgot to say. Changing your mind isn't proof you're a bad person, it's actually proof you're paying attention to that information coming up along the way. It's an interesting way to think about it. You have the right to make mistakes and be responsible for them. In other words, to be responsible for their consequences. If you convince yourself that you have to be perfect in all of your interactions and relationships and you can never make mistakes, then assertiveness is always going to feel like this contract you have to you have to get the other person to sign in order to give you permission to step into it. However, when you accept that even sometimes when you assert yourself and when you are honest with others, you might get things wrong and there might be messy consequences and you might change your mind over time. Even when you accept that you're human and you're going to make mistakes, that's what gives you the permission to be assertive, because it will stop feeling like your assertiveness is like you walking along a tightrope and you're never able to mess up, and in fact falling off the tightrope is the equivalent of you plummeting headfirst into the Grand Canyon. Accept your humanness and assertiveness will feel like this blossoming. You have the right to say, I don't know. Also one of my favourite ones. In my experience, anytime I feared saying I don't know, it's because I think that by saying I don't know, I'm going to come across as stupid and uncertain. And it's not really fun to give someone uncertainty, especially in a romantic context. But when you think about it, saying I don't know isn't the absence of an answer, it actually is an answer. So in a way it is you being certain. In a somewhat similar way to how you changing your mind isn't a sign you're a bad person, it's a sign you're paying attention. You saying I don't know is also honesty in the greatest sense, because if you genuinely don't know something, you're going to get yourself into more trouble by standing there like a snotty-faced goblin trying to pretend that you know more than you do. Do you want to marry? I don't know. Do you want to come? I don't know. How do you feel? I don't know. Why did you do that? I don't know. You're allowed to say I don't know. I have been using this one since I read the book about 3 or 4 months ago, and it has really started to improve a lot of my relationships in my life, because I'm now no longer trying to be consistent and present myself with this false air of certainty that I don't have, and then it just feels like I'm standing on a shaky foundation that isn't even stable beneath me. Saying I don't know is certainty, and it doesn't mean you're stupid. Number 7. 5 more. Was that math correct? You have the right to be independent of the goodwill of others before coping with them. Now, that's a bit wordy, so let me break it down. Basically, what that means is you don't need everyone to like or approve of you before you can function properly. If you struggle asserting yourself, then you likely believe, deep down, something along the lines of, if they're upset with me, I can't relax. But if they approve of me, then I'm okay. Which, as you know, is a wobbly place for your self-worth to live. And it's also why every time the moment comes for you to express yourself, it feels like you have to go round to everyone involved, get a contract from them that they've signed that says they give you the permission to utter a word. But remember, you can exist without other people liking of you. Liking of you? Liking you. A mixed liking and approving of you together. You can still make decisions without other people's approval. And you can dislike someone or something when other people disagree. You don't have to wait for everyone's approval and permission before you can function properly. Was that what I wanted to say? You don't need everyone to like you before you can function properly. I was meant to re-say the first line. Kind of messed it up, but let's move on. Number 8. You have the right to be illogical in making decisions. Your brain is convinced that everyone else is logical and you're the irrational one. After all, look at their well thought out decisions, their perfectly walked career paths and just mental clarity, whereas look at your impulsive decisions and chaotic mornings. But the truth is that no one really knows what they're doing, and all of us are just making it up as we go along. Even me making this YouTube video. About 2 hours ago, I was literally sat in the living room watching videos about the new film Obsession that just came out, which is awesome. And now suddenly I'm making a YouTube video. This wasn't planned. We're all just a bit, So the key takeaway here is it doesn't feel right is more than enough of an explanation for you making a decision. So too is it just feels right. Why don't you want to be with me? I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Why do you want to do that? I don't know, I just want to. It feels right. Other people's inability or unwillingness to understand you is none of your business. It doesn't feel right. It does feel right. That's fine. Number 9. You have the right to say, I don't understand. When I was 19, I worked on a construction site and my boss was a big fat plumber called Martin. He was very scary because he used to, well, I found him scary because he used to shout at me whenever I did something wrong. And he was just quite a big, scary, domineering figure. And I was this, teenage little 19-year-old boy, quite scared of him. Every time he used to give me a task to do on the construction site, he would explain it to me. I would stand there pretending I understood him because I didn't want to admit I didn't understand, because I didn't want to look stupid. Because in the past, when I said that, he had a go at me and was like, how are you so stupid? So I was negatively reinforced or I just didn't want to admit that I didn't understand. So he would explain the task to me, I would walk off not having a clue about what he wanted me to do. An hour later I would sit there just thinking, oh my God, what am I doing? He would come and find me having done nothing, made no progress towards what he actually wanted me to do, and then he would shout at me. All because I was terrified of just saying, I don't understand. Which, thinking back on it now, must have been really annoying for him because we got no work done and I was it was a disaster. So what it's made me realise, especially in reference to these laws, is assertive people prioritise understanding more than looking smart. So the next time someone's explaining something to you and you genuinely don't get it, whether it's an emotional conversation, a logistical conversation, a practical conversation, ask for clarity. Slow the conversation down and admit, I don't understand what you're saying, until you finally say, okay, I get it, and you can demonstrate the understanding. You're allowed to say, I don't understand. Anything else I wanted to mention there? Yeah. You're allowed to get people to repeat what they're saying until it sinks in. Final two. You have the right to say, I don't care. Another really hard one for us who struggle with assertiveness. You don't have to, this doesn't mean you don't care about people or you're a bad person. It just means that you're admitting of the reality of life which is your attention and your energy are finite sources, and you don't have to care about everything equally. Just because something comes along your path doesn't mean you have to throw your attention and energy onto it. You don't care about everything equally, which in a funny way, even if you pretend to care about everything equally and have time for everyone knows that deep down you can't. The tricky thing here is some people will take this to mean, oh, well, then you should just always admit when you don't want to do something, which, yeah, true, that would help a lot of us. But, a friend texts you and you don't want to hang out, or you don't want to have a video call with someone, or you don't want to meet up with this friend who keeps messaging you, but you appreciate the friendship, you just don't want to speak or meet up right now. You probably don't want to say to them, I don't care, in which case, be precise in your language. You can just say things along the lines of, this isn't a priority for me right now, which is true because the word priorities doesn't exist. You can't have more than one priority. So it just means, look, you're still important to me, or look, I've got, changed the words of the but based on this video. I've got other things that are a bit more demanding of my time right now, but I still value this connection. You're allowed to not care about everything equally. What was the next one? Yeah. Just admit you don't care. That doesn't mean you're doomed to spend an eternity in hell. You're just a finite human being, directing their resources to what calls you. Overall, you no longer have to believe, I'm responsible for everyone's feelings, people need to approve of my decisions, I must always have a good reason. Changing my mind is wrong, and saying no makes me selfish anymore. And instead, you can remember and settle into the understanding that you have the right to say no and assert yourself without feeling guilty. But even if you do feel guilt when you assert yourself, bring it on. And that isn't a sign that you're doing anything wrong or that you are a bad person. So that is the video. My what to do next for you is a simple one. Go through or return back to whatever law in this video spoke the most to you and ignited something within you, and simply get a piece of paper or write it down on the notes on your phone. I would recommend a piece of paper. Just write it down. Write down the law and then read it every day for the next 7 days. Familiarise yourself with it. Just write down the law that stood out most to you. Otherwise, if you at all feel this gap between, this is the last thing I'll say, if you at all feel the gap between what you actually want to express and then what you say and do in your interactions and relationships, then I invite you to, for free, go down to the link in the description and join the waitlist for my upcoming course. Whether you struggle with assertiveness, admitting how you feel, expressing attraction to people, initiating conversations, the course is going to help you close that gap between what you want to express and what you actually express, so that you can start showing up in your interactions and relationships as the naturally assertive, confident, and socially fluent version of yourself. So I'm really excited. The course has a protocol that made the single biggest impact in my life that I'm really excited to share with you. So feel free to join the waitlist. Anyway, thank you very much for your time and attention. Stay disciplined, playful, and dangerous. Adios, muchachos y muchachas.